You're now entering the LuxCore Studios. And you've secured a seat for the Protecting Your Radius podcast. Here, we build connections from your contracting profession to some of the top bleeding edge products and services. Don't get deterred. Let's not delay. Here is your host, Nathan Downs.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Protecting Your Radius podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Downs, and on today's episode, I have my friend Joe Everest in studio.
Hello, hello.
What's up, fence expert?
Not much. It feels like I'm here quite a lot, and I like that. I like that. I'm getting used to the drive. I just put it on cruise and let her go.
That's really not that bad of a drive.
It's not, especially, so I left first thing in the morning. I actually brought the wire home with me last night, so I dropped off daughter at summer school, hit the highway.
That's awesome.
I think it was like me and four other trucks out there this morning. So.
I-44 from Missouri to Oklahoma all the time. I mean, that's an easy. So when I was a kid, I worked on race cars.
Okay.
And our turbo supplier was Turbo Wholesale Supply in Joplin, which is right over the. So I drove that a billion times, running turbos from here back and forth. They would rebuild them and do all that. Anyways. Yeah.
It's a great drive, and it's pretty easy.
It's super simple. Yeah. You get out in Oklahoma on these turnpikes, man, and it's just like, the Autobahn.
Listen, I love it when you hit the state line and you get to Oklahoma Interstate. Oh, it is, and the roads are nice and smooth. Right. And
let's clarify. The only roads that are halfway decent in Oklahoma are the turnpikes.
The turnpike, that's right.
Every other road is absolutely abysmal. Like everyone, like all my family from the New England area, they're always fixing the roads, and they have immaculate roads up there, which I'm amazed because of all the snow and ice and everything. But they come down here and they're like, y'all suck. Like your roads are potholes everywhere. Yeah. That's why I have a Bronco. So I'm always off road.
Well, and you're like, everywhere. It seems like we're always working on the roads too, but ours aren't immaculate.
I know. Ours are terrible.
Every January we come to the Chili Bowl and watch some dirt track racing. Every year, without fail, there's some sort of highway work going on right after you get off the turnpike, start cutting around Tulsa. Yeah. There's road work somewhere. Yeah. And the roads are never great. Go figure.
Just the turnpike that we pay for.
Well,
so those toll roads.
Hey, listen, if it's going to cost me $7 a time to have good roads, I'll pay it. I mean,
that's a valid point. Maybe I give the toll roads too much of a hard time. It's possible.
There might be something to that.
It's possible. Yeah. But as we talk about toll roads and government spending or not spending, that was actually something that we were talking about before we hopped in the studio, Joe, was the economy. Yeah. It's a hot topic.
Of course.
All over the country. I've got buddies like Matt Sheridana out of the Boston area. He is like calling me like, hey, what are you doing? I'm like, working.
Yeah, right.
Like, not me. I'm like, really? So I heard that from a couple other people out in California as well and stuff. So
interesting.
It seems to be, as you and I know, we've stated on both of our shows before that it's very often whatever happens on the coast is much to a lesser degree out here through the central part of the United States, but we get it much later.
Yeah, it's like we're insulated, right? So we'll still feel it. It'll take longer to feel it, and we'll feel it to a lesser extent, I think.
Yep.
We saw that in 08, 09 with the housing crisis. We still felt that, but it wasn't just complete turmoil that you saw on either coast. I mean, you saw a slowdown, but you didn't see just a complete turning off of the spigot.
Exactly. And I know that's what was going on in other parts. So with that being said, there's parts of the country right now that are really, really not pushing along like we are.
Sure.
And stuff. What do you think are, economic factors and playing into that right now?
So, and listen, it depends who you listen to.
Okay.
Right. So a lot of times when you're listening to national media, they're talking about, well, is it going to be a soft landing or a crash landing in terms of the economy? And I think they're really talking to the coast where here in the Midwest, we haven't seen any sort of landing, right? This plane is still merrily chugging along. I think part of this is going to be just in the economy in a broad sense, it's going to be wants versus needs, right? Yeah. And there's a whole conversation too that people are switching from things to experiences, right? So they're taking trips instead of buying an extra car, and they're not buying another home. They're visiting 3 or 4 Airbnbs instead of a vacation home, that sort of thing. And I think that might be what we're seeing too. But the nice thing about being in the fencing industry, though, we're more of a need than a want, right? 3 things. My granddad always said 3 things to keep a fence company in business: kids, pets, and bad neighbors, period.
Yep.
Once those start going away, then we're probably in trouble on the residential side, of course. But it's just, I haven't seen any sort of slowdown. Not when we're looking at calls that turn into leads that turn into sales. It's all chugging right along. So I don't know. I think to my earlier point, I think we're a little bit insulated here, and maybe we're starting to see it on either coast. So maybe those in the Midwest that aren't feeling it should start maybe planning on it. Say, hey, 6 months from now, what happens if my business slows a little bit?
Yeah,
that sort of thing.
Yeah, and that's one thing we're doing here, especially being a younger company. You know, I'm at that point, like the precipice. Finally, some of the money's come in from the last couple months where we've just been booming.
Yep.
So you start to see this coming in, and I'm like, okay, what can I buy and reinvest? And I want to do this and for expansion here and there, and then realizing that this may pass.
Yeah,
and we may start to feel some of that.
Yes.
So especially a younger company, I'm sitting here thinking, you know, I want to buy a new truck.
Sure.
Like it's in the plans.
Yeah.
But I was actually going to do it last week, but I didn't do it specifically because of what we're talking about right now.
Yeah.
And I look at a lot of different things. So, you know, Brett Richardson over at Fence Track, and I've talked a million times about this. What markets do you focus on when you're wanting to understand, like, where is the building construction market actually going?
Yeah.
And so we watch futures, specifically of the raw lumbers.
Yep.
And then steel, like what steel's selling for tonnage, right? And I noticed that steel is ballooning again.
Yeah.
But like, and I've been asking the question, but why?
So, and it depends what steel you're watching, though. So, like cold rolled steel, they say cold rolled steel is going crazy right now. But if we're just talking about steel ignite, it's going up, but it's not going crazy. So that it depends what you watch too.
That's true too.
And this is the frustrating part when we get letters that say, well, due to the increase in this and that, we're going up X. And you're like, well, that information doesn't jive with what I'm seeing.
Right.
Like, just because you're saying this one spot market is going up.
Right.
Well, that doesn't take into account the ancillary costs that go into it. Right. So labor hasn't gone up significantly in the last 6 to 12 months. Now listen, labor went up quite a lot 24 months ago.
Yeah.
Right. But I think it's steadied. At least in our business, we've hit a nice point where everyone's fairly happy in the last 12 months. So labor hasn't gone up much. I say that to say it depends on which market. Like cold rolled steel is going crazy right now. So that's when you start thinking about loading up on pipe and post, rail, whichever you want to call it. Some people call it pipe and some people call it rail. And you're like, well, it depends how heavy it is. Round steel product is what I'm saying. Now might be the time to stock up.
Yeah.
I haven't seen any big price increases come through, but like you said, watching the futures market, you do see it there.
Yeah. It's on the precipice, you know, and I got on some of the pages the other day. I was told by one of the distributors that they were on black SS40 pipe. It was like a 5 to 8 week lead time.
I saw you post that.
What? And I'm going, what the heck? What?
How?
Like, how? It's June.
Right.
Like, not that many, like, I've been there. Not that many people are buying pipe.
No.
And then they're like, well, you know, we could pull in from another branch and da-da-da. I'm like, hold on. How did you run out of pipe? Like, it doesn't make sense. Well, then I come to find out, you start talking to them and they're like, we'll contact a Wheatland or something like that. And then they're going, yeah, it's 5 to 8 weeks. What? Even Ameristar was saying that on their pipe.
Interesting.
And I'm going, what are we doing, guys?
Yeah.
My concern, and one thing why I even want to bring it up, Joe, is my concern is that the same thing that happened in the wood market will eventually continue to work its way through every marketplace.
Sure.
And so what happened at COVID with wood that we didn't see was the foresters, so the people that actually mill the, you know, cut down the trees and take them to the mills, were just chumming along, no problem.
Yep.
Then the mills were making them wood, and then the demand started to skyrocket, and the distributors in the mills went, right, hold back. Oh, we're running out of wood.
So
we're
weird.
running out of wood.
Yeah.
It's piling up around them, right? And then so I read an article last year in 2022 that the foresting, like the farms, the reason the wood went back up, like it dipped and then came right back up in Q3, was because the farm, that I think that's what they call them, farms, right? They were like, no, we need our nut. Right. Like everybody got rich off this thing, and we didn't.
It's our turn.
Yeah. So then all the farms went up, and you're like, okay, well now there's another ping in the system. So I wonder, especially you doing some manufacturing now and stuff, I wonder on the steel side, I feel like we're often insulated because of finished goods compared to just raw and whatever. But I noticed the same thing. Like, is there a point where some of these things are happening in the futures that really don't have anything to do with us, but then our manufacturers have to adjust according to what the marketplace dictates? Or how do you look at that?
Yeah. So there's a couple things there. So one, you're watching the spot price in the United States, right? So there's a conversation here just about import versus domestic. So what happens in the U.S. market doesn't necessarily happen abroad, right? And so when we're importing goods, even with tariffs included, you don't see as much of that on imported steel sort of thing. So last year we saw this in domestic steel was affected, but import steel wasn't as affected. But you had some market price stuff going on to where they saw an opportunity. I mean, it's a business,
sure,
right? So if you're operating in the market of Tulsa and you catch wind that 80% of the competitors have gone up $10 a foot. Maybe 7 or 8 feet.
Exactly. We're probably moving.
Something like that. Yeah. So you get wind that the market price is raised and you'll probably follow suit to some. So there's some of that. But with steel having both domestic and imported sources, I don't think you see it as much because domestic feels that pressure too.
Yeah.
I mean, they see the same reports everyone else does that imports not going up. And so then domestic says, well, if their imports not going up, then we're going to have to try to hold it as long as we can. But I don't know. And like you said, market price has a lot to do with that too. So it's a mixture of both. But there isn't, the thing is, there's no world market to watch. Right.
That's
so, true. And it's not, guys, import is largely taken to mean China or Asia in general. So I had an email exchange with a guy from Turkey. He misunderstood our website, I guess. He thought we bought Chain Link. And so he said, we've got all this machinery in Turkey. We're moving it to Chicago. We'd love to be able to supply you with Chain Link wire. And I said, well, perhaps you misunderstood the website. We manufacture Chain Link wire. And then it was disappeared, right? But there's more sources than China is what I'm saying. I mean, now, listen, China is the elephant in the market as far as imports go. But you have Turkey and India produce quite a bit, especially when we're talking about galvanized chain link fittings. Both of those are very big. Mexico is actually a pretty decent importer of, at least when it comes to strand, galvanized strand. So import can mean several different things. But so you see that pressure though, at least in manufacturing, that domestic is sometimes held in check by the fact that import isn't affected in the same ways.
That makes sense. One thing I remember that I was always confused about when I first got into the contracting side 10 years ago was you'd go out and see the pipe, the markings on the pipe, and how much pipe that I would see coming through town here that was from like UAE, Pakistan. Like those are huge markets for the pipe side, let alone in the Indias and the Chinas for the fittings. And so there's places all over the world are impacting this. So you're right. It is hard just to follow one market segment. You really got to look at the whole thing. But I think that's where it's confusing for a lot of people because they hear us say that and then they're looking at it and they're like, well, that's cool. I really don't know what it means.
Right. Well, and listen, it's incredibly hard to track if that's your full-time job.
Oh, true.
Right. So much less like, listen, guys that have a full plate already, it's like, what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to read these industry reports and these manufacturing reports and try to disseminate what this means? Because listen, none of the reports are like 3 lines that say raw materials up, labor's up, so price is affected by 23. They're like, due to the we foresee in Q4. So you've got to sit and filter that out. So I completely understand that it is a full-time job just to try to keep your thumb on that pulse.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard reading the industry reports. I'm like, I get confused. I'm like, wait, what? I need to buy what? And then it's like, we recommend nothing. And I'm like, oh, tell me something. I
get bored. I get bored reading those things. And so I take a highlighter and I'm like, okay. And it feels like I'm back in middle school. Like, highlight the important parts. Yeah. Now reread it. Does this make sense? Like, yeah. All right, I guess I'm, in 5th grade again. Here we go.
Yeah.
But anyway.
So like with your, so you guys manufacture chain link wire,
sure.
Like, so into chain link mesh and stuff.
Yeah.
What does that look like on that end of the business? Because we all understand like there's all these different types of things without like, I guess, pulling the curtain too far back.
Yeah.
But like, where do you see, like, is there import stuff? Is there domestic stuff? Is there a mix of it? Is it like, does it matter? Like, because on pipe, like, let me be honest.
Yeah.
Like on pipe, I've used both. I can't tell you the difference.
Right.
Does it really freaking matter? The only thing I think the difference is because the times that we have to use domestic pipe is on a government job, making sure that the money had stayed here in the country.
Right.
However, where did the raw steel come from? Because then you start looking at that and you're like, it wasn't even from Nucor, Ohio, or U.S. Steel, or, oh, no, bullcrap. It was imported. So you're like, like my mind is boggled.
So American made, the term has some stipulations on when it can and cannot be, called American made. And it has to be a substantial amount of the value. Don't quote me on this, but this is my understanding. It's a substantial amount of the end value has to be derived within the United States.
Right.
Well, that's fairly ambiguous. So are we saying, are we using retail? There's ways to look at this. And that's an interesting conversation because, all right, so there's a couple different questions. So one was, the Buy America. Yep. So if you have government, and it's typically projects that have federal funding. You don't see it even as much in state and local funding, but federal funding typically has a Buy America clause in that you have to follow this American-made deal.
Correct.
And that's when you get into this, what is American-made? So I could take a raw import and I can code it. And as long as I can say there's a substantial amount of value added in the United States, and I can take into account my machinery cost, I can take into account my labor, of course, my overhead. If I impart significant value onto this product, now it's American made. And I think you see that not only in fencing, but I think you see that in a lot of different industries, and just it doesn't really get talked about, that even if it's a domestic product, it's not necessarily wholly domestic, right? Mm-hmm. So the raw part of the raw material, the base product isn't necessarily domestic.
Right.
So a large part of it comes from overseas. The next part of it is, can you tell a difference? I would argue if it was a complete blind test, if we took 10 rolls of wire, 5 of them import, 5 of them domestic, me weaving wire, I don't know that I could tell you the difference. I mean, there's some things you look for on coatings and stuff like that. But I don't, from 5 feet away, probably not.
Yeah.
15 years from now, from 5 feet apart, probably not. Right. So they still, when you're buying this import product, it still comes with reports as far as coating reports. They have, like on chain link for class 1, minimum 1.2 ounces. What's interesting is some of the stuff you see in the import market exceeds that by a large margin because they don't want to have to, you're not sending it back.
Right.
They're going to give you a credit and then you're going to scrap it or something. So the reports are all 1.4, 1.5, 1.6 to where it's far exceeds 1.2. Same thing goes with tensile strength as far as consistency and that sort of thing. So can you tell the difference? I really don't think so. I really don't. And I feel more comfortable saying that because now it's funny when you sit on the other side of the table, you hear different conversations.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think it would surprise people how much of the chain link in the United States market comes from import sources.
Gotcha.
So naively, maybe, I had assumed a lot of the chain link that we had bought in the past and installed in the past was from domestic sources. And I guess it was an assumption. And you know what they say about assuming? It's not a good idea. So, but now looking at this side and looking at, just where things are priced and how they're priced and knowing what the raw input costs are, there's a lot more import getting sold than people think, which, to my earlier point, isn't necessarily negative, right? From a finish point of view, from a quality point of view, I'll tell you this, some of the import stuff I've seen come in has been nicer finish than some of the domestic. So it's like anything. It's all in what you compare it to, right?
Yep.
So it is what it is. As long as manufacturers, as long as we have strong baselines on what's acceptable in terms of quality, and as long as we communicate that, I don't have a problem with it.
Yeah.
So I was talking to someone more or less on that side of things, and we were having this conversation, domestic versus import. I was like, I had no idea that so much of it. He's like, here's a good rule of thumb for you. If it doesn't say domestic on your invoicing, on your sales orders, confirmation, that sort of thing, it's probably not. It's probably import at some point. And sometimes there's mix and match because import takes a while to get in, and full transparency, we do weave some import wire. So we placed an order for a couple containers of import wire at FinStech, which has been a little bit ago.
Right.
And it's supposed to come in either late this month or early next month.
Okay.
So you're looking at 3-4 months.
Yeah.
In the best of conditions. It's just kind of the reality of it. Whereas domestic, we just brought in a couple truckloads of domestic and it was here in 2 weeks.
Gotcha.
So I say that to say sometimes manufacturers, you might see a mix of both.
Yep.
If they're running low on 11.5 gauge 1.2, which there's a different conversation there about coatings on 11.5 gauge, but 1.2, and you're running low on import, you might bring in a couple truckloads of domestic just to beef up your supply and keep your machines running so that the machines don't stop.
But there's no noticeable variance between them.
No. That's what I'm saying is they'll mix and match it in a load.
Right.
And you, the contractor, would never know.
Right. Wow.
Which isn't.
It's not. Yeah.
It's neither here nor there. But it was surprising to me to see that because I had assumptions.
Sure. Yeah, I have assumptions too, since the largest chain link manufacturer's right down the road. And then you go to their West Tulsa facility. I don't know if you've ever been up by there, but right now you could drive by. We're doing a project around the corner, and I bet there's probably 100 million miles of chain link over there. I mean, it is acres.
There's a lot.
In acres.
There's a lot.
Incredible.
Yeah. So, in terms of people holding on to wire, so machines are only profitable when they're running. Right.
Makes sense.
So you don't want to shut them off because then listen, if you've got the machine dialed in and you've got the personnel that can run it, you let it eat.
And the rod.
You just and you got the raw material, you let it eat. Yeah. Because what if, right?
Yeah.
What if there's, I don't know, a labor shortage? What if there's a supply shortage? What if? So, when you see that, it makes sense. Yeah. Like they're stocking up just for the what ifs. And they're producing it today at a price that they could probably hold on to it for a while and be okay, knowing that the natural progression of things is it will cost more later.
Yeah, of course. So with that kind of philosophy behind the manufacturing side, have you taken any of that to the fence company up at Ozark Fence?
Yeah.
Like as far as like, how do you do? For me, we're limited on space.
Sure. Yeah.
We're buying by the job often, but we started doing some bulk buying in the form of like a half truckload at a time type deal or whatever. But a more established company. I mean, you guys are much, much larger than us. What do you guys do, and how do you look at that stuff when you and Sarah are sitting down and everyone's going through it? What do you see on that compared to manufacturing? Like, I'd be interested to hear the difference between.
In terms of like maybe planning and purchasing. Yeah. So we'll sit down December, January, look at what we went through the past year, try to make an educated guess on where we're going to end up at the end of this year, and then start planning out purchases. Does it make sense to buy a bunch of pipe now? Maybe, but no, I think December, January, we weren't hearing this about cold rolled steel. So then it's also like, well, do we want to hold on to cash a little bit though?
Right.
Because once you turn it into product, you can't turn it back as easily, right? You got to go put it in and you got to sell it. So do we want to tie up our resources and stack it to the sky? Maybe not. Now, that's the right now answer, right? Or the earlier this year. The last year answer, when there was question marks on if and when you could get it, or 2 years ago, it was, I will take truckloads of what you will sell me. Because I know it doesn't go bad. And we could talk about the finish and all that, but it doesn't go bad. We can still install it in different scenarios. So send me what you can, when you can, and I will buy it. I'll wire you money the day it shows up. So I follow you everywhere. And you were talking about, I saw a TikTok clip where you're talking about, just keeping vendors happy, because then they can become a resource for you later, right? As far as like, and so we were wiring money the day the truck showed up. They're like, well, it's net 30 terms. I know, but I want you to remember that I'm quick to pay, so that if we ever got in a pickle and it was me and somebody else looking for a truckload of wire, and that I'll wire money the day the truck shows up, and maybe they're 30 days, it'll probably show up at my place.
100%.
If that's the only criteria and all that. Yep. So that was the answer 2 years ago, though. I'll buy whatever you can, and I'll stack it. And we did. We stacked pipe higher than I may have ever seen it stacked, right? And the same thing with this was before we were weaving wire. We're bringing in truckloads of wire from wherever we could get it, and we were finding every nook and cranny. Now, if you come by our lot, it looks a little thinner, right? Yeah. We can still get it. The price is somewhat stable. Mm-hmm. And so now the conversation is, do we tie up a bunch of capital in product when we can get it easily? The price difference between buying truckloads and buying portions of truckloads isn't massively different right now. We'll pay a couple % more by buying a half truck instead of a full truck. Mm-hmm. I would rather keep my powder dry. I'd rather keep some money in a bank account and just wait to need it. And it's right, wrong, or indifferent. That's kind of where we're at.
No. But I agree with that, because I have heard people online, Joe, talking specifically about, like, I can't wait till I'm a big enough company because I'm going to buy like the big boys.
Sure.
And I'm like, that isn't the way it works anymore.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah. No. So that's a fair point. Anymore is the fair point.
Right.
When we were kids, that was the flaw, is once you got to a point where you could afford truckloads, there was significant savings. There was significant relationship advantages with the manufacturers. Truckloads typically got priority over portions of truckloads as far as getting materials and that sort of thing. So back in the day, there's absolutely that thought. When you can get to a point where you can afford truckload, you buy truckload. Mm-hmm. And there's still sectors where that makes sense. Lumber. We bring lumber in by the truckload still because, one, they don't want to ship portions, and we do get a decent price break when they do. So we still do when it makes sense, but much less than we did back in the day.
Yep, for sure. Yeah, I think lumber, and sometimes with pipe and stuff, I've still seen it where they'll try to encourage, especially at the beginning of the year or end of the year, they'll try to, hey, will you take 10 semis full of pipe? Sure. How much is it?
I'll make you a deal. Yeah.
You're like, all right.
Well, and you see it with manufacturers that don't own their own trucking.
Right.
So because to send a semi here from Springfield, it's about $1,000.
Yeah.
Right. To send it up to Lincoln, Nebraska, $1,800.
Yeah.
Whether it's got 4 pallets or 20 pallets or however many. Yeah. So if I'm in that situation, I'm going to incentivize people to buy by the truckload. If I've got to pay for it anyway, then we might as well fill that thing to the brim. But if I'm a manufacturer that has my own trucking, it does still matter, but not to the same extent.
That was always one of my favorite things with one of the distributors. They'd always be like, hey, we got your orders, but the truck's not full, so we can't ship you the truck yet. I'd be like, listen, I had to actually cancel 4 orders one time from one of them that was doing that because they were coming out of state. Yeah. They had 4 orders. It was about 2/3 of the truck. And then they're asking me like, hey, we need to, and I'm going like, we were brand new, like a month, this is last like April. And I'm going, no, I go, just cancel the orders. Yeah. I'm like, I'll have to buy it here in town.
There'll be somebody else that'll sell it.
Yeah. And I hate that. But then again, that goes to the partnerships and all that stuff like that, where you start to figure out like, well, why, why is this happening? And then understand too, as a business owner or someone running a business like this, why are they having to do that?
For over 30 years, Southwest Automated Security has been the premier provider of gate operators, access controls, CCTV, and so much more. Visit southwestautomated.com today, taking dealers to the next level.
You know what I'm saying? Like there's a business aspect for them,
of course,
as well on
of course.
But like you said, if they don't have a truck, then that makes more sense than me just going, well, my salesman's just trying, because I've heard people say that, oh, my salesman wants to fill out the truck. But if there's like a prudent reason like that makes sense, okay, you know, but
so we get the same thing currently with a out-of-state manufacturer who does the same thing. Well, to an extent, they say, hey, listen, there is a $300 or $400 fee here if we don't fill the truck.
Right.
Can you help me fill the truck? And if so, I can waive that fee because we can offset it better. Or, and you know, this is something I would probably recommend. Or do you know another fence company in town that needs some stuff that we can fill out the rest of this truck? Yeah. You know, like they're willing to work with you. But to their point is like, listen, we do have a cost to move this truck.
Yeah.
There's fuel, which is not cheap, right? There's also all of the upkeep and maintenance that goes on for every mile that truck moves. So, which is something we're getting into. So, looking into trucking our own, right? And because right now we're paying for freight, for full truckloads to move. And so it's like, well, how can we reduce that cost? Right. Because that's something that for full truckloads, that's something that we're absorbing. So, well, we buy a truck. Well, those aren't cheap. And well, okay, so you do that. Now you need also your DOT numbers.
Yep.
You need your IFTA. You need your motor carrier authority. You need. It's like, oh, so trucking our own maybe won't be a massive cost savings, right?
Right.
Now there will be an availability, benefit, but I say all that to say there's still costs. The manufacturers owning their own trucking have a little bit more leeway in that, but every one of them have a different business model too.
Yeah.
So everyone's kind of got their own thing.
And I think you said something, Joe, to interrupt you there, that is a great turning point for the conversation, because we started with the economy. Yeah. We started with the way the market's going. And then you said something that can bleed into every contractor listening to this for sure, is costing, right?
Yeah.
Like your perception of costing.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one thing. But then in reality, what is the true cost?
Sure.
And how do we figure those things out?
Yep.
So we see it all the time. People get online. How much should I charge per foot for this? Or, hey, I've got a job.
Hey, what do you guys charge for?
I got a 200-foot job of 4-foot chain link. How much does that sell for?
What's the market price? Well, let me go refer to my market price indicator here.
Hey, listen, if we had a market price thing, you know we'd all be sharing that around here. Here's the market price.
Right before MSRP. We all go to jail.
Yeah, exactly. Like MSRP nationally on a 4-foot galvanized chain link this week is. I might actually make a show and like see what happens. How long I'm on YouTube with that.
So if you're polling data, if you're releasing polling data,
that's true.
That's purely fine. That's not having a pricing conversation. That's you reporting data in the market.
Man, that's bro. You know what? You might have just came on to something when you just said that, because I was like, the Protecting Your Radius podcast has now been converted to the Radius polling center
of the 20 markets surveyed this week. Yeah, exactly. The average price of $6.
I'm going to find all of y'all over the United States that listen to this and just start pinging it in, and every week I'll send us an email like, hey, just fill in just fill it in.
You'll be the Nielsen rating of the fencing market.
Man, that's kind of brilliant, actually.
Not a bad idea.
I mean, don't get me started.
You would need to get clean feedback. You know what I mean?
That's true too.
You would have to trust the data, but any of these polling shows have to anyway.
That's a good point. But okay, so what I was thinking was, I wasn't going that direction, but I like the way Joe thinks. That's why he's the fence expert. He's also the market expert. The marionette. But no, I'm just kidding. You are the marketing expert too, though.
I enjoy marketing.
So we noticed that Joe's YouTube shorts have just changed something. And mine are right behind him because I had found out a similar thing recently. So I don't know if he's watching the same social media people I am or something. But anyways, you will see the Radius reels and all that in the shorts and stuff like that. Also looking a lot more like the fence experts over here.
I love it.
Really soon. So it was funny. I got a call from Rob last night. We were on the phone late last night. He said, "Did you see Joe already did it?" And I was like, "Oh no, I hadn't even been on my phone today." And then I looked at the reels and I was like, "Son of a gun." I was like, he read the same thing we did or heard about it from the same people. So.
Well, I'll say this. So I need to introduce you to Mark. So Mark's new on our YouTube, on our social team. So that would be Mark.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So which is probably something everyone can disseminate from this too is, hire the right people and put them in the right seats. Mark's so much better at all this than I am. We have conversations about it. He goes, "Hey, here's some ideas I have. Could I try these out?" Which 99% of the time is, yeah, you bet, give it a shot. And sometimes I'll interject and all that. But no, marketing is something I enjoy a lot.
Sure. You put a lot of time and money into it too.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So where I was going with that was the costing thing.
Yes.
I was like, we went all the way around the whole thing to get the costing. So we're down to one camera.
Okay. All right.
We're losing them left and right.
They're full.
We appreciate you guys. If you're watching this on YouTube, this is
you made it to the
I
end.
told Joe, I was like, I think I'm like full on all these cameras, but now we have figured out we are full. So if we go audio only at the end, everyone will know
this is
what happened here. So with that being said, the wide shot's it.
This is where you say, for the full episode, follow the podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
Just in case that one goes on.
You know, actually, this makes for better content because then when you go on YouTube, it's funny watching them like go down in succession, you know?
Right.
So I know a lot of you guys just like to listen to this, but if you come over to YouTube and check it out, it is kind of funny, and it will be great content as we're looking at the single camera,
the one camera
now in the room.
Yep.
So costing,
Yeah.
We'll run through this real quick.
You bet.
You've got to know what your costs are to really understand. You know, and that question always comes up too is, how much do I charge? What? And I even told someone that called me the other day, I said, "How much do you want to make?"
Yeah,
because that should tell us how much you want to charge.
Right.
Are you just trying to get jobs just to turn dollars?
Yeah.
Or are you actually trying to make a profit and then work your way backwards?
Yeah, that's the thing. What is your goal? Is your goal growth?
Right.
Well, then your pricing would look different than if somebody's, in a maintain trajectory, So that absolutely, you got to know what your goals are first.
Yeah. There's still people out there. They asked me the question about taking material and multiplying it by a factor.
Yeah.
And then that's what the price was and stuff. And I was sitting there going, that does not work today.
So I'll say this. So one thing I've said on the show, and I continue to say it, is your total cost, materials, labor, equipment. I'm a big believer in figure out what your equipment cost is per job. Mm-hmm. That should be included.
Yep.
But your total cost times 2 is a starting point.
Sure.
Get you to 50% gross, you're in good shape. No one ever complained about having 50% gross.
Right.
Especially the industry standard is somewhere between 30 and 35%.
Right.
So that's the only aside I would make to
the problem is here's my point with that.
Yeah.
The problem is most of the time the guys are saying they're taking material only.
Okay. That
and
makes sense.
doing it. Yeah. Which I'm like, well, that doesn't quantify anything.
That's only a part of the picture.
Right. Like, so I understand what you're saying. If you took all of them, but then that's what we're doing anyways when I cost out a job.
Yeah.
Right.
And you've got to think that, so if you're purely doing that, does it take the same amount of time, the same amount of labor to install a 4-foot chain link versus a 4-foot picket?
No.
Your labor rate's going to be significantly different. Or a 4-foot horizontal.
Yeah.
Or a 4-foot insert name of ridiculously, lengthy process. You can't only go by material because wood material might be more expensive than chain link on a material only basis, but you're still opening yourself up for some risk there.
Sure. How do you guys look at that when you're trying to figure out everything? I mean, do you ever?
We itemize everything. I mean, down to the finished nails, how many nails we think we're going to use. Now, labor is an educated estimate, right? Like we know how many panels we can put up, how many feet, if we're talking, depending on what type of fence we're talking about, we know the expected production, right? So we can plug a production rate in. But I mean, everything down to, like I said, equipment is, and this is something when I talk to folks, they're like, well, you charge your people for equipment. Don't you own your equipment? Yeah, absolutely do. But I'm going to have to replace it at some point. It has a lifespan. Our trucks, our trailers, everything has a lifespan. It's got upkeep and maintenance. And God forbid, so say we're talking about a Bobcat MT100 or a Dingo or a whatever. Those things don't work perfectly all the time. Right. So what happens if you're loaded up for the morning, you blow a hydraulic hose or whatever catastrophic failure, and you've got to go rent one.
Right.
Well, that's coming out of the bottom line. Yeah. Right. So by inserting equipment costs, we hedge that a little bit. Now, if we go to rent a piece of equipment, it doesn't entirely cover that. Right. But it helps, right? So what we do is we depreciate out our vehicles, right? What is the depreciation schedule on the vehicle? The trailer. I mean, your accountant knows all these off the top of their heads, of the equipment, of the tools, of the everything. Okay, so whatever we're talking about, say it's 5 years. And so every 5 years, I'm going to have this number, which is the replacement cost of the thing. Divide over 5, divide over how many feet of fence you'd install in a year. That's going to give you a pretty close idea. You want to dial it in, but it gives you a pretty close idea of how many dollars per foot you should charge for equipment replacement. So is it a lot of legwork? It absolutely is. But it makes sure that you're in the right ballpark.
Exactly. And it answers that question that I think so many people have is what do I charge?
Yeah.
Every one of us is different. Like you can't say it's cookie cutter across every market. You can't say not even in your own town because like
that's the point.
Everyone's companies are different.
So say I moved to Tulsa. I moved next door.
Right.
Same building, same amount of employees, same material, same. You and I would charge different rates.
Yeah.
Because our goals are different, likely. And even if our goals were the same, we would have different thoughts on profit margin and different thoughts on how much do we reinvest versus take for profit. And we would just have different ways of running our businesses. If every cost was exactly the same, our per foot price would likely be different. Right. So how can we hope to ask somebody halfway across the country, hey, what do you charge for 4-foot chain link? What I charge, and God forbid they take advice from somebody who they base their rate off asking other guys and who asked other guys and who asked other guys. Like, what is this number? This number is a fairy tale at this point.
Yeah.
But it's that, that question it bothers me on so many different levels. And and there's a whole discussion on the legality of that question anyway, because price comparison is mentioned in the Sherman Act.
Sure.
So anyway.
That's true.
That's probably its own thing.
So we're wrapping this thing up. We put the bow on it.
Yeah.
Is there any final last thought you want to leave everybody with, buddy?
I am confident in our economy, just to bring this whole thing back around. Based on what I've seen in my business, talking to you about your business, talking to other contractors about their business, I am confident in our economy in terms with how it affects our businesses. We're a need, not a want, to a large extent. Now, we build some extravagant fences sometimes. So if it were only needs, we'd build a lot of galvanized chain link.
That's true.
But to a large point, I think our companies are fine. And this is the conversation I had with my team the final Friday of last month, so a few weeks ago, was, guys, you got to turn your TV off or at least run it through a filter of these are people that are, one, reporting on a national scale, and two, you also have to take into account that they are businesses also, and their business model to some extent is selling by fear. So, I mean, that raises viewership, and that's what they're here for. So you got to run it through that lens. And I'm here to tell you, and I'll show you, to the team, like, listen, I'll show you the books. I'll show you our call logs. I'll show you our quotes per week. I'll show you our conversion rate per quote. I like where we're at. We're in good shape. Now, we were in great shape 2020, 2021, right? So if you look at our graph, is there a downtick? Sure. But I like where we're at a lot. We're not seeing the doom and gloom. We're not seeing a hard crash as of this moment in time. You know, I don't see anything, you know, when you're talking about markets to watch. One thing I was going to say, so for residential, we watch new home starts.
Yep.
Was that the last camera?
Maybe. Oh, that was one of the cameras. That was awesome. Go ahead. We're still going. We're still going. We got one. I was like, I'm not sure what camera that was. It just went off, but it was not the last standing. We're going to call this the last action hero camera.
There you go.
Oh, we lost.
What's it?
Oh, that's awesome.
It's got
okay. It just went to. Well, we're audio only here the rest of the way, so we got a cool graphic going. I'll make some ASMR sounds in the background.
Welcome to the audio only portion of this
You've
episode.
Made it this far, 40-something minutes into the podcast.
Oh, this is what
YouTube
you should tease. Like,
down.
And right at the end of this, Joe told us what he watches for residential fencing.
I'm actually gonna put that in the description now because now that all the cameras are completely down. I'm like, glad we have this fancy studio that you can't see now,
and all this great equipment.
Jeez, love it.
Now, residential's new home starts.
Yeah, new home starts.
Right. So we watch new home starts and we add 6 to 8 months to it. So if we saw a dip today, we'd tell the team, buckle up. 6 to 8 months, we're going to see a dip in residential fence. Now, not all residential fence we build is new home construction. A lot of it is, but not all of it. But that also tells us that home buyers are looking at the home market, that, you know, their fingers on multiple pulses are telling them that, you know, they're not as confident. New home starts, at least in my little neck of the woods in Southwest Missouri, are still going strong.
Yep.
I have no worries. I am confident. Now, I'm also cautiously optimistic in that we're still cutting expenses.
Yep.
Right.
Good.
Our mandate this year is to cut expenses by 10% over last year.
Right.
God forbid we see a slowdown. We're in good shape.
Yep.
And if we don't, we're in great shape.
Yeah. Even better.
Right.
Absolutely. Buddy, thanks for delivering the wire today.
Of course.
Everybody check out www.ozarkwireworks.com. Current June pricing is up on the website there.
Yep.
I've been mentioning this on Downtime with Donnie all the time. The new website that Benji built is awesome.
It's slick.
Dude, it's so much better.
He
than
did
that crap
a great
had before. It was so bad.
You're talking to the guy that did the first one.
I was just gonna say it was a freaking like Wix special, but it wasn't even like Wix or something.
No, it was Odoo,
like Site Builder or something. God, bless. It was
terrible. It was not fantastic.
But anyways, it's cool now. It
great.
works. It's super fast.
You can sign up for a newsletter. So if you don't want to check out the site all the time, we send it the Friday before the end of the month.
Yep.
Or before the first of the month.
I get my emails.
So you get an email directly to your inbox. Awesome. So you stay up to date on the current pricing.
Check it out. We love it. Yeah, that 10-foot wire you just dropped off looks gangster. So we're
10-foot black. I was so proud of that wire. We earned that wire. Let me tell you, we were talking about what it took to get that thing made. I say the team earned every foot of that, but
for sure
turned out great.
Well, we appreciate you. Social handles for Fence Expert over here.
Search Joe Everest.
There you go.
Spelled like the mountain. Joe Everest, pretty much wherever you consume content is going to get you to me.
Y'all know he's in orange all the time. At least on the end of this podcast here, you can't see the orange anymore.
Did you see the truck that was posted on the socials last night that was purple? Have you seen
Roberts?
This? Magnolia.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Purple seats
inside.
Yeah. And so I commented furiously typing how to turn seats orange.
Well, you take it to like one of the shops that works on the stereos and stuff, and they'll do upholstery and stuff like that too. So you need to. I want to see that black truck get wrapped in chrome orange and then like orange seats and
here's what I'm thinking: chrome orange with what looks like chain link lattice overlaid over the orange chrome. I think that'd look cool.
We thought about actually. There was a point in time when, if you notice, our flatbed out there has the chain link pattern in the wrap, right? So I thought about on the Bronco putting chrome blue with silver chain link coming up from the bottom all the way around.
Yes.
And then my wife looked at me and said, The hell you're doing that? I went, okay, well, it was a cool idea. I mean, it would have been freaking slick.
Listen, I'm just saying it would be really neat.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be unique.
Everyone else would love it.
It would be unique. It would look terrible. I'm like, would it look terrible? But then she's like, how much chain link do we sell? And I'm like, looking at the numbers. I'm like, okay, fair. But it's an easy. I mean, what am I going to put pickets on the bottom? I'm going to put iron. Like no one would even know what it is. They're like, why does it have black stripes all over?
What is this?
What a weird Bronco.
So what Sarah tells me, my sister tells me there in the office when I have ideas like this, she'll look at me and she'll just go, well, that's an idea. And then she'll walk away.
Yeah, we'll put a
gummit. Yeah. We'll circle back around to that one later.
Yeah. And by later, I mean never.
Yeah, we never happen to circle back around. Yes, that's an idea.
Crushing dreams. Appreciate you guys. We'll catch you on the next episode. Peace.
You've been listening to the Protecting Your Radius podcast from the LuxCore Studios in Bixby, Oklahoma. Thanks for sticking around. And connect with us and all of our partners at www.protectingyourradius.com. We want to thank our premier partners. LuxCore, the newest line of premium quality composite infill to slide into your fence track fence system. Frame your style today. Also, Stain Track, the world's first patented standalone stain machine. Utilizing flood coat technology, Stain Track covers boards, pickets, posts, and any type of dimensional wood you can think of. And what better way to use your Stain Track machine than to use the easy application Wood Defender family of stains. Wood Defender goes on easy and covers in one coat with no back brushing. And of course, the true power of our show is you, the listener. Please rate and review our show on whatever platform you consume this content. Your 5-star likes and reviews help other contractors get the message that we all want to be better and do better. And in the construction world, we can never forget that before you can be great, you've got to be good. Before you can be good, you've got to be bad. But before you can even be bad, you've got to try.